Before we be Before we start tonight's program, this is a reminder that this episode will address multiple sclerosis, mental health, and physical health. These topics may be sensitive to some of our viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. We remind you to please consult your doctor, your mental health professional, your outreach group, your sponsor, or specialist before adopting any change to your dietary, physical, and/or mental health regime. If you're looking for options to go down with respect to mental health, contact SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, at 1-800-662-4357. Again, 1-800-662-4357. The service is open 24/7, 365 days a year, and is a confidential, free information service for individuals and family members facing such stressors. Also, if you're feeling suicidal, crisis, or emotional distress and need to be put in touch with a crisis center, call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. It's 1-800-273-8255. Or go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org. You can also text the word HOME to 741-741. Those resources are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year as well. Moreover, and something that has come very real to me within the last 6 weeks. The National MS Society is a collective of passionate individuals who want to do something about MS now, to move together towards a world free of multiple sclerosis. Multiple sclerosis stops people from moving, but the National MS Society exists to make sure that MS doesn't. It is an organization that many dear friends of mine do charity walks, charity drives for, and it's something that I have donated to over the last 10 years, and I could be rest assured that I will be donating a lot more now, given the situation I am in. To contact the National MS Society, please call 1-800-344-4867. Again, 1-800-344-4867, or go to their webpage at nationalmssociety.org. And on that, let's begin. Tonight, we're talking about health. Not just weight loss, not just sobriety, but our health from both a physical and mental perspective, and the things we can do to help that. I'll take your questions and comments. This is The Venture Forward. Good evening, or good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you may be, and welcome to The Venture Forward. My name is John Venturini. I'm a recovering addict of overeating, obesity, alcoholism, and compulsive gambling. And it's a pleasure to see all of you tonight. We've talked about many different topics on The Venture Forward in the last season and the last few weeks, and this is sort of how everything comes together, at least in my mind. And I think it's something that comes fresh in my mind as far as how everything comes together and as far as how everything works together in one package. As far as, well, I had these sort of roadblocks in my way. I had this sort of incredibly bad class 4 severe morbid obesity problem. And I know that with that, I couldn't move one way or another more than 5 or 10 feet with it. And I know that that was being driven by a lot of the things underneath that, whether it was the overeating itself, or the alcoholism, or the compulsive gambling, or a lot of the different things we also talked about with codependency, co-addiction, anxiety, depression, all of that. Tonight, I'm going to try to paint a picture around it. I'm also going to talk about the things that I've taken into consideration as I start to try to fix these things. The things that were obvious outside of, okay, overeating, tracking food, watching my calories, going on a high protein, low carb sort of diet, but then also coming to the realization that I do have a drinking problem and realizing that I indeed am an alcoholic. So as of May of 19, not having one more drink and counting those days as much as I'm counting the days I'm tracking food. And then realizing that, hey, what other things have held me back? Well, compulsive gambling. The fact that no matter what, I had that in my way too. And realizing that that was a problem of significant effect and basically drawing back off of that. So we talk about those 3 addictions, those 3 issues, those 3 roadblocks, if you will, as the primary roadblocks of what this venture forward was. But underneath it all, we start digging into other things. The fact that there is anxiety, the fact that there is depression, the fact that there are all these things, and then, as evident from what happened to me in November, another case of demyelination, multiple sclerosis, and dealing with that now too. As I've told many people, I'd much rather be fighting that now at nearly 200 pounds and not at 480. But we'll talk about that as I say hi to all of you on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Sarah, good evening. How are you? Hope you're doing well. This person, for everybody to know, is my mom. So, good evening, Mom. Matt, how are you doing? I see that you have it both on Facebook and YouTube. So, Matt runs a wonderful channel up on YouTube called Awesome Wood Things, as well as All Things YouTube, as far as a whole plethora of many different YouTube channels. Matt, a pleasure to see you this evening. Alicia, how are you? Glad you're on the program, or glad you're watching the program tonight. Hope you're doing well yourself. Sandy, hi. How's it going? Jen, good evening. Hope you're doing well as well. So, where do I begin? I guess I begin at the beginning, right? I think the thing is, I knew the things that held me back. I knew that in order for me to work through it, I kind of had to piece that together. And the thing is, whether it was a question of me being 480 pounds and not being able to move, but then also realizing there's a reason why I'm eating too much. There is a reason why I was compulsively eating, closet eating, if you will, whatever sort of verb you want to call that. And I think it's because deep down inside, there was that sort of thing that nothing was good enough. I was always pressing for something else. There was always, I guess the term I would say is, there was never any satiation. Whether it was something that was biochemical in nature, or something that was truly chemical, or something that's truly mental, or anything of the two. There was never any sort of satiation. Now, if that was something that was consistent through my life, maybe. I don't know. Couldn't tell you. But I know that no matter what, it was holding me back. So what I want to do tonight is start going through these things and start going through exactly what these sort of definitions are. Because I think when we do that, we get a better sense of that story. A couple more shout outs here. I see that. Matt, you're welcome for the shout out. I'm glad you're here again. Hey to you. And good evening to you, Sue. So when we talk about health, what are we talking about? Many different definitions for the term health. We could see many different definitions, if I could talk straight. But we need to go back to basics, go back to brass tacks. Sort of like what we've experienced in the last year is that in order for us to make any sort of step forward, in order for us to do anything fruitful and more onward and upward in our lives, we have to go back to basics. In my case, that was a question of starting that exercise in 2019. So let's talk about what we mean by health, but then let's start going down and starting to understand what these sort of nuances are underneath it all. And if ECAM wants to participate real well, that'd be great. There it is. Great. Health, at its bare minimum, is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity, as pursuant to the World Health Organization. When we talk about things like health, we mean it from many different ways. We mean it more than, hey, someone has a health problem. Someone may have a broken leg, or someone may have a broken arm, or some sort of physical abnormality or physical injury. They may have a weight problem, like in my case. But we talk about health a lot more deeply as far as just the obvious mental health. The thing about what I've experienced and what people have noticed about things like MS is that some people can't detect MS. Someone may look absolutely normal and yet have the symptoms of MS. With me, as I talked about in the last couple of weeks, it's the numbness around my forehead. It's the numbness down the right-hand side of my body. It's the optic freezing. It's the fuzziness in my right ear, so on and so forth. It's not necessarily something you can see, but yet there are many, many people in this world that deal with multiple sclerosis. So when we talk about health, we mean that from more than a physical sort of state. We mean that as far as all systems, physical, mental, psychological, all of that. When we start talking about mental health, we get a little more deeper in this, right? Mental health, from the mentalhealth.gov website, government website for mental health, is that it's a health that includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. That was prevalent when we started talking about depression and anxiety. We started talking about mental health and, moreover, what the sort of effects of mental health are to the things that we hold as addiction, as things that we hold as basically other behavior, but also the other sort of physical forms that we go through. We go back to basically the episodes of the last 6 weeks, and we know that through taking a high-dose corticosteroid over 5 days, we know from the exacerbation flare-up that came on to my brain and my spinal cord that there was some sort of effect as far as the body's way of handling with emotion, handling with mental sort of flow, if you will. But again, it's not something people can quickly denote. People can find. It's something that we have to be understanding of and do a better job of talking and listening to. It affects how we think, how we feel, and how we act. It also helps us determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices. Mental health is important at every stage of life, from childhood to adolescence to adulthood. Mental health is something that starts very, very young. And I think more and more we realize the sort of things that we see in basically juvenile mental health and basically childhood mental health. And, you know, I've been very fortunate to have a few people that have done the show that understand it, that deal with that an awful lot. And understand that at such a tender age, whether it would be something like at 15, 16, 17, 18, or as young as 5, 6, 7, 8, those cases of mental health are important, because therein lies the fact that this is a human being that's growing up. They're turning into an adult over time. If it's a handle of the mental health at that stage of the game, the more important that they could do something about it. So mental health, I would say, is just as important, dare I say sometimes more important, than we know classically from physical health. But I know that from the fact that I've been dealing with anxiety and depression and whatnot for a long time too. I guess the next thing I want to talk about is something that is basically brass tacks. Something that we talked about on the very first episode, actually the second episode of the show, in the sense that I have dealt with obesity and being overweight for most of my life. I'll quickly say most of my adult life, but I've been always a big kid, and that transformed to me being a big, basically young adult, and now, at 41 years of age, to be 480 pounds, that was the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. It was the sort of thing that either something has to change now, or there's not going to be much of me left. So let's talk about what obesity and being overweight is, with respect to the definition of the World Health Organization. Now, we could spur debate on this until forever, right? Because I think that the basic metric in that of a body mass index, a BMI, is a bit controversial. There are people that have BMIs of 25 to 30 that are very physically fit, that have a lot of muscle mass, and yet, if you look at an old definition like the World Health Organization's definition, they're deemed obese or they're deemed overweight. So let's go to the definition and talk about what we need to know as far as the definition, but then the things that we have gravitated to as far as what is being physically fit. Overweight and obesity are defined as abnormal or excessive fat accumulation that presents a risk to health. A body mass index, BMI, over 25 is considered overweight and over 30 is obese. The issue has grown to epidemic proportions, as we talked about in the very last program, with over 4 million people dying every year as a result of being overweight or obese in 2017. Now, those numbers, as we alluded to on the last Thursday episode, have grown a bit. And that's according to the Global Burden of Disease, as basically the sort of thing that the World Health Organization produces numbers on a yearly basis. Obesity is a problem. You talk about the things that have transpired in the last year, which I will not specifically talk to what exactly, because I don't want to be demonetized, but we talk about the fact that people are living a different life now. They're not basically going out. They're not going to the workplace. They're doing everything from home. So their lifestyle has changed. Their way of coping has changed. And I could basically rest assured that those numbers have grown. I haven't seen any sort of post-2020 sort of obesity number or overweight number, but I could almost guarantee you that number has gone up. We could take something like the things we've learned last year, the situations that we are in, and then also realize that now, more than ever, is a chance for us to do something about it. So, I look at something like what we've gone through as an eye-opening moment, but to be truthful, and as many of you know, that eye-opening moment started me in 2019. What 2020 practically did is it allowed me to basically recenter my efforts around it, because I'm not traveling all the time, and definitely my life has drastically changed. So more the reason for me to take this on. More the reason why what I'm doing is the right thing to do. It's why I'm down nearly 280 pounds. From a place of being at 480 to being a place of around 200, I took that goal of removing the roadblocks that were in my way and proceeded forward from it. And it's not something that's easily done. I'll tell you, there are days that are harder than others. It is constantly hard work. And if we don't commit that work to ourselves, if we don't take that time to basically grow that, have a very deep respect for ourselves, garner that sort of love for ourselves, then it's hard for us to basically spread that to whomever, whether it's our friends, our colleagues, our family, whoever. It really does start inside. couple people joined us while I was talking about obesity and being overweight. LT, glad you're here this evening. LT runs an incredible, great YouTube channel that of calling Recovering Addict. He's on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. LT, good to see you this evening. So we talked about what obesity is, at least from a definition sort of perspective. We know about the stories of the things I've done, the things that I've done to try to overcome that. But when you think about that, in addition to other things, it starts accumulating. It becomes basically a mixture of all these things. So we talk about obesity. Well, what was the very next thing I talked about? Alcoholism. Now, alcoholism can take many different sorts. Could be many different things. There are alcoholics that have an alcoholism problem where they're drinking every day, multiple drinks, massive amount of drinks. And then there are alcoholics that basically drink on occasion, but drink massive amounts on occasion, or they do things to basically offset mental trauma by drinking. So, as what Wikipedia would say, but also a couple of other organizations, alcoholism is broadly any drinking of alcohol that results in significant mental or physical health problems, right? So again, it goes back to health being more than just physical, more than just mental, but basically the melange of the two. Alcoholism is not a recognized diagnostic entry, but predominant diagnostic classifications are alcohol use disorder, as basically given by the DSM-5, or alcohol dependence as seen in the ICD-11. So it is diagnosable from an alcohol dependence sort of perspective. There is something that could be written as far as alcohol use disorder. But alcoholism itself is not the sort of DX code that's basically being used. It's basically those sort of offshoot diagnoses that does get diagnosed. In my case, even when I started going down the road of trying to watch my caloric intake, of watching what I was eating, realizing that I was eating to excess and well beyond excess, well past satiation. The other thing that followed was alcohol. There was a story of me on the last night I ever drank, of the 2 pitchers of jalapeno cucumber margaritas, the Manhattans, the red wine, and more bourbon. And certainly the physical reaction that I will never forget, that will always be the thing that holds me back, that makes me reminded of how bad that was in my life. But also the fact that if I'm trying to lose nearly 300 pounds, I'm not going to serve any service by drinking to that level of excess. And that goes back to another situation in the sense that there is no happy medium. There's no satiation point. So if you think about my relationship with food, my relationship with overeating, you could quickly tie that to my relationship with alcohol. Hence, a major problem that held me back for so long. And it's something that I know that with that in check, with the fact that I am an alcoholic, and I know that I'm alcoholic, and I vow not to ever have a drink ever again because I am an alcoholic, and I know that I have an overeating problem due to basically bad eating habits, I know I can remain steadfast in this. So alcoholism is definitely part of that story. While I was talking about alcoholism, Aubrey, good evening, good morning rather. How are you? Hope you're doing well. So we talk about the overeating. We talk about the obesity. We talk about the alcoholism. What was the next thing we talked about? And you can see that there is a common theme here. There's a common theme of no happy medium. There's a common theme of keeping on doing something over and over and over again to excess. And we talk now about something that hit me really hard from the sense of, well, here's a very hard habit to have, but it's hit me financially, which sometime in February, we're going to start talking about that story and how I try to plan to get over that hill, how to get over the scars and the sort of outside effects of what this has done. compulsive gambling, or as some will call it, a gambling disorder. It's the uncontrollable urge to keep gambling despite the toll it takes on your life. Gambling means that you're willing to risk something you value in the hope of getting something of even greater value. In my case, it was getting into that sort of optic daze in front of a video poker machine or a slot machine, or the sort of daze I would feel, or excitement I would feel, that dopamine trip I would feel when I was playing something like craps or playing poker. Something, either way, was not healthy for me. It was something that was far from productive. It's something that was causing a very dire state for me. Now, you combine that realm of the gambling, again, another key theme of no happy medium. No matter what happened, there was never any happy medium. I could win massive amounts of money. There is no happy medium. I'm not playing to go get that greater value, because the fact of the matter is, if I got it, I gave it back eventually. And when that is the case, then it was a very bad sort of thing to do in the beginning. Very bad thing to do en masse. So compulsive gambling was basically something to fill that sort of drip when there was nothing else going on. So if I'm not going to go closet eat in a drive-through lane of your pick random fast food place, and if I'm not drinking, then I'm doing that. Either one of those three are horrible things to do. And it's something that I'm finding that a lot more people are realizing in their own lives. The things that they've realized, like, oh my God, what am I doing? What am I doing holding myself back? And the fact of the matter is, it takes work. It takes a realization. It takes going through the steps. It takes making amends of the things you've done, the people that you've hurt, and working through it. At some point, we'll revisit the steps because they're very important to talk to. And quick little plug for LT, Recovering Addict. He talks about that all the time. So it's something we have to remain resonant for. The thing I'll say is, the steps aren't something that's only tied to alcoholism. It's not the only thing that's tied to drug addiction. It's not tied to just gambling. It's not tied to just overeating. It is something that is steadfast between addiction itself. Not just saying that it's the only way around it. But you ask any friend of Bill W., they're going to swear by it more times than not. So we talk about the steps. Couple comments as I was talking about compulsive gambling. LT says hi to Obs. Had to get that in. Jeanette, glad to see you. I'm glad you made it to the show live. I'm glad you're here. So good evening to you for sure. Ob says 2 weeks of soul searching and lots of changes in my life. Yes, lots of changes. So many changes, but I'm not gonna sit here and try to count them all, as I know you're not gonna sit there and try to count them all. But we know we've gone through so much, and Ob, I'm proud of you. I know about your story. It is an incredible story, and keep fighting the fight, man. Without question. Jen says, no happy medium is a great way to describe addiction. Yeah, there's no satiation point. There's always the need to do more and more and more, to eat more and more and more, to drink more and more and more, to gamble more and more and more. Wait, that doesn't seem like the right bet. Maybe I should be betting more and more and more. There is no happy medium. Ob says, I've been watching videos on drug addiction and learning what and how the addicts feel when they do heroin, fentanyl, crack, and I much have better perspective on what an addict goes through. It's that drip that leads to no happy medium. It's that addiction. It's the same thing. We could sit down and say one addiction is worse than another, Doesn't matter. Addiction is addiction. And if we're doing something that is not normal, is not any sort of normal way of life, it's definitely something that is pressing to that individual. So it's something I always recognize in the sense that I couldn't go down this road without realizing how bad, how sick, and how paralyzing, I would say, the overeating was. Because without trying to crack that, I don't think I could crack anything else. But it's more than that. It's more than the diet. It's more than the exercise. It's what goes on up here. And realizing the reasons why you're doing it. What sort of feelings that you have that you're not being honest about, or places, or what the things around you. It's just giving you that false sense of just keeping on doing that. So it always resonates to that sort of level. Now we talk about how deeper the addiction is, where we talk about cocaine, we talk about heroin. It's a lot more chemical in the sense that it's very hard to pull away back. That's why the opioid crisis is one of the biggest problems we have in this country, because of the chemical reaction. So, but addiction is, of course, addiction. Hi, Jeanette. Yeah. You're welcome, LT. For sure. Ob says, I'm a full-blown alcoholic, and you're no different than I am. You're darn straight. We're both alcoholics, and I will never say that there's a difference at all. Alcoholism is alcoholism. Thank you, Ob, for saying that. Ob says, I want to learn more about drug addiction. Yeah. I think when we get a better understanding of that, it allows us to be better listeners, but also guide people down the right pathways of recovery. We have to understand more so we can help do more. So you're spot on there, Ob. Jeanette says, I'm starting my step 2 and I'm finding all kinds of normal flaws I have that tie into addiction. Yeah. It absolutely does. Outside of realizing it and then starting to work through the program, yeah. It could be something as very basic, but then you start making those sort of realizations. And then when you start making an inventory and you start thinking about what sort of things have held you back, but also the people that you need to make amends with, it becomes real. And that process could take forever. In my case, is there 3 sets of lists? No, it's the same list. It's the same list. But it's a real list. It's a very real list. Ob says, I really dislike AA who judges addicts more and more now. They are misinformed fools. There are many people that don't gravitate necessarily to the practices of AA and the Friends of Bill W. So you're far from alone in that sentiment, for sure. It's definitely something where there are different ways of getting the recovery we need. But it's also realizing that we have a problem, we have to work through it. If and when we are willing and ready to do the hard work to do so. Ob also says, I could not understand the addict's mind. I have an idea now. Yeah. Ob then says, what goes on in a gambler's mind? What triggers in his mind? What type of reward do you get when you make a wager? Let's talk about that. I could try to paint the picture. Why not? I think the reason why I ended up at a casino instead of doing anything else is I needed that sort of excitement. I had that sort of premise in the back of my mind that this was the day I was going to win tens of thousands of dollars. This was the day where I was going to be free of the things that held me back from a financial sort of perspective. And instead, it just pushed me back further and further and further. So that's the first phase of it. The second phase is just the mere excitement of playing the game. I mean, it could be the people that you play the game with. It could be the surroundings of the game. It could be that sort of science that goes around with the sort of sense that gets sprayed into a Las Vegas casino, which is definitely a science that major casinos think of. There are a lot of different ways to attract our sort of sensory systems to realize this is something we should be doing, and this is something we're not going to get away from. And we're going to keep doing it, and keep doing it, and keep doing it. That's why there's no clocks on the wall. So you start at 1 hour, and then you realize it's 5 in the morning. So the thing that goes on in the gambler's mind is, this is an incredible feeling. Boy, I just had a major win there. Let me see if I could double and triple down on it. And then I end up giving it back. That's sort of what goes on in my mind when I gambled. I'm sure if you ask a handful of gamblers, they'll all have different stories on what they thought of when they gamble. Nonetheless, not a productive system, not a clean and productive system, and certainly not anything that produces a satiation when you think about it that way. The kind of glaze that came over my eyes, I kind of mentioned it before, that when I was playing video poker or playing slot machine, and how I couldn't back away from that, and I was thinking, oh, well, maybe this is the hand, or maybe this is a spin. There's nothing healthy about that. There's never a winning point, and even when you hit that winning point, you'll want to give it back because you're addicted to that thrill. You're addicted to that sort of dopamine trip. It's just something that I think about that. If I could take a quick bit of a tangent real quick, I think about that. I think about the accountability of the tax audit. I think about all of that. I think about all of the financial realizations that have come to me at 43 years of age and realizing I really put myself back. And sure as heck, I'm not going to put myself back anymore. We'll talk about what I'm doing about that in the coming weeks. But it's real. It's going on now, and I'm dealing with it. And the only way I fully make amends of that is taking part in that exercise. Jeanette says, addiction is addiction. It's all awful. Absolutely. Absolutely. Sarah, there could be. I think there are ways that we could start talking about that sort of satiation and finding out whether or not there's something we could treat genetically through medicine or through modern science. I don't have any time to look for that. I just know I have to avoid those sort of behaviors. Sue says, the steps have helped me with all my changes too. I know for me there was no happy medium also. It's a common theme. The lack of a happy medium. The lack of satiation. Always going for the next thing, for the next thing, for the next thing. You want to tie that to food for a second? The fact that I couldn't go to a fast food place and be happy with one burger. There was always 2 or 3. There was always a couple of side orders. And yeah, I was probably eating in my car. No satiation. Did I feel awful after I ate? Yeah. Did I try doing that again the next day or the next week? Yeah. There is a bit of a common linkage, by the way, of overeating and the chemical compounds in diet soda. I would eat all of that and drink a diet soda. And every time I would drink the diet soda, the largest diet soda I could find, I'd want more food. So I think tying the diet soda out of what I eat, what I drink, has helped immensely. But again, it talks about that there's no happy medium, right? Ob says, I looked at the steps again and there's nothing wrong with them. For me, it is how we approach the 12 steps. Yeah. For us to realize that we need to do something about it. Kind of makes us have a lot of questions, for sure. Ob also says, some AAers treat addicts like lepers. It is true. Yeah. Good evening, Murd. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, it is a very interesting look at a gambler's mind. There are people that gamble that have a better control of it. At least they make it seem so on the surface, but then you look deep down inside and it takes a lot of discipline. And I can rest assured, discipline I do not have. So, yeah. Definitely not a road I want to go back down again. Sarah asks, do you think video games do the same thing, even if they're not video poker or slots and such? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know I'm live streaming on Twitch, so I might make a couple people angry, but yeah, there's addiction in gaming. There's addiction to playing hours upon hours upon hours, doing 48-hour marathons of the game, the latest thing that dropped, trying to figure out exactly how to be it. If you're playing like a first-person shooter or any sort of multiplayer sort of game, and that sort of thing, right? There absolutely is. There's a social element as well, because you're usually playing the game with a bunch of other people. And they're playing for hours upon hours upon hours on end. So there's definitely that sort of camaraderie, but then there's also the serious time expense that's being invested in something that basically provides a sort of sum that's not the greatest, at least in my eyes. Maybe in their eyes, that's all they want to do in life. And if you're telling me that that's the sort of thing they like to spend their recreational time doing, well, fine. But when you start neglecting other things in your life that you need to do, in my eyes, that's when it becomes a problem. But again, I am not a therapist. I say that full-fledged, right? I am fortunate to have therapists that watch the show. They can weigh in for sure. I definitely want to hear them weigh in on that. But it's a very good question, Sarah, and I'll bring it back up for a second. Yeah. I think at some point we need to talk about that. So I'm going to earmark that for sure. Thank you for the question, Sarah. Ob says, how about the music and the bells from a casino? Is that a trigger that sets off obsession of the mind by any chance? Absolutely. I had a term for that. I called it the ding-dings and the whoop-whoops. I was saying, what's a ding-ding and a whoop-whoop? It's the sound that a slot machine or a video poker machine would make when you hit big. Ding-ding and a whoop-whoops, when cleverly placed, ends up with a big win where you're getting a hand pay. Hand pay is something that's $1,200 or more, right? So it's basically form and function there. But that sort of sensory sort of deposit of what's going on around you causes that sort of thing to happen. And because the dopamine drip keeps on hitting, you're tying events, both physical and audio, to that. Now you have those sort of mnemonic sort of markers now that tie that back to the event. It almost becomes part of the addiction in itself. Yeah. Yeah, was it a dozen burgers? No, they were big burgers, though. If I ate a dozen big burgers, I don't know where I'd be. But it was, I'll give you a sample. I would go to something like Five Guys. And I would get the big burger with everything on it. I would get a hot dog with everything on it. And then I'd get the large order of Cajun fries. And that'd be lunch. And then you'd be rest assured there would be a there'd be a dinner that would be just as big, if not bigger. Again, it goes back to satiation. It could be something that's definitely intermeal as well. Big lunch, big after lunch, big dinner. Just no sort of point where you're saying, oh, I can't eat anymore because my body's tricked. The body's level of satiation, chemically, diet soda, is fooled. Sue says, I know we talk on overeating, gambling, sobriety, but I had to break the smoking addiction, and I'm taking that one day at a time and also. Yes, Sue, absolutely. I have some people that are near and dear to me that are battling that now too. And it doesn't matter if you're someone that smokes 2 packs a day or someone that smokes 2 cigarettes a day. If you're smoking, it's something that you need to look back and say, can't do it anymore. Especially with tobacco, especially with the sort of chemical compounds of a cigarette and how it's basically manufactured. So anything you need to do, Sue, to break that, stop smoking, keep working at it, keep at it. And if you ever need someone to talk to, realize you have a lot of people in this room, also in the recovery groups, but also me. Reach out. We're here for you. So we're proud of you. Keep at it and keep doing it for sure. Ob says, I played Battle Pirates 12 to 14 hours per day for 5 years straight. I have no gaming problem, LMAO. As long as you like it. I know if that was the case with me, it probably would be a problem. Ob says, I believe if I spend time on something and when I neglect my responsibility, I have a problem called unmanageability. Yeah. Your priorities are now kind of withered, right? They're basically diminished. Your priorities are in the wrong place. Especially when we think about that sort of checklist that we talked to about the gambling back a month and a half ago. When it starts affecting your job, when you start thinking about it all the time, when you can't sleep, yeah, it becomes a problem. I don't have that checklist handy, but I could definitely show it on the next time we talk about this. For sure. Jeanette says, I think that social media has created a whole new generation of addicts. Yeah. Social media is something that you can get on your laptop, on your phone, on your any sort of device, on your watch. Yeah. Always that sort of instant drip, no matter what device you have, and you could be addicted to it. And then the games you play on social media or the conversations you have on social media, it could easily be something that takes way too much of your time. That could cause that sort of distortion of priority, that distortion of that sort of responsibility loss that we were talking to before. Ob says, just like the sound in a bar room, chattering music and smoke in the air, like casino bells and whistles. Yeah. It's part of that sort of sensory sort of picture that we hold on to. So congratulations on the 22 months. I think I misread that. Yeah, the smoking piece is just as much an addiction with everything else. And for those people that have quit, one, thank you for quitting. I hope your health is in a better place now, but also congratulations for doing so. Keep at it. It's the most important thing you can do. Jeanette says the dings are actually tone that have been proved to release dopamine and make people happy. And casinos are laid out to make it easy to be lost, hard to see the exits. Also the reason why there are no clocks on the wall. It's why you lose all sense of time. Do I believe that sort of myth that they pump the casinos with oxygen? Maybe. But there's something going on there, for sure. Congratulations, Sue, indeed. Sarah says the added chemicals, definitely, but the brain has nicotine receptors, and that's one of the things that make quitting cigarettes so hard. Yeah. It doesn't matter how many. It's something that's really hard because now you're dealing with those receptors, and now you're fighting against that too. It's outside of doing any sort of nicotine gum or nicotine patch. There's a lot more to it. It goes back to the mind and basically driving on why you cannot have a smoke again. So, very good point. I think the other thing I wanted to talk about is we talked about the 3 chief addictions. We talked about mental health. We talked about health. I think I'd be remiss to not talk about the other thing that's kind of underneath it all that's affected me, and whether or not it was withered away from any of these behaviors or what have you. I couldn't tell you, and I don't think a doctor knows the answer to this, as that is the case with everybody else who has this, but multiple sclerosis. A demyelinating disease in which the insulating covers of nerve cells in the brain and spinal cord are damaged. The damage disrupts the ability of parts of the nervous system to transmit signals, resulting in a range of signs and symptoms, including physical, mental, and sometimes psychiatric problems. This is something I am dealing with. This is something that I'm very thankful for having doctors that are here that are trying to help me. My neurologist has done a really great job. Very thankful for University of Pennsylvania. Very thankful for my primary care physician over at Lancaster General. They've done a lot to help me. And the thing is, it goes back to the sense that it's easy to weigh ourselves. It's easy to figure out how much we're drinking or taking realization of that, taking note of that. But when something becomes a problem with your brain, with symptoms around your face and the side of your body, and you can't hear straight, and you can't see straight, and short-term memory is a bit off, this is when you really need to be in touch with your doctor. You have to be, right? I'll be honest. When I was dealing with the weight problem most of my life, I never had a good relationship with my doctor. When I lost the weight the first time, I had a better relationship with my personal trainer. Yeah, I had a personal trainer. Good gym membership. But then I realized that over time, I just gave that back for many things that are around me. I go to 2010, 2011. Outside of the things that are going on with my brain and demyelination, it wasn't that I was getting weighed in saying I was working with a nutritionist or a dietitian. These are things I did on my own. That sort of drought, that sort of lack of judgment affected me. You get to 19 and where I am, that whole lose it and doing what I did I just did what I did the last two times, but I also realized that there was something wrong up here and addressing that and figuring out the things around me that were causing me to do those things, that sort of environmental factors, so to speak. But then again, I didn't start going to the doctor until I started feeling better about myself. I didn't have a regular PCP until late 19, early 20. And now my PCP basically are one of those that are helping me save my life. So I can't imagine a world now without a doctor. But then I'm also getting to be near my mid-40s, so I need to have a better relationship with my doctors. I need to know what's going on, and I can't be afraid of it too. It means going to get my blood drawn every year to see what's going on with me. Yeah, if you have an MS diagnosis, you can get your blood drawn more than once a year. You start being part of a study where you're drawing 11 vials off of you to figure out what's going on. I'm not afraid of that, not at all. Because I know that there are people trying to figure out what's going on with me so I can live the best life possible. That's what it's basically summating to with me right now. But you can see how all of this works together. And it's kind of the picture and the importance of health is we must be accountable for our health. Whether it is physical, whether it is mental, whether it is psychological. We have to be accountable for it. There really is no excuse. And we have so many things out there, by way of the devices we have, by way of what we find on the internet, by way of the copious amounts of research we can do. There really is no excuse. We are at a point right now where we know to find resources that we can have a bit of a conversation now with our doctors, at least have a conversation starter, and they can gear us down the right way. But there really is no excuse now, especially when I'm dealing with something like multiple sclerosis. As much as all the other Americans that have dealing with multiple sclerosis, everybody in the world that deals with MS. Something that's real, and it's something that we will work through. But I'm also very fortunate for the work that the MS Society is doing. A couple more comments. Sue says, it's getting easier understanding from programs like this, helping me understand me. Yeah. Anything I could do, anything this show can do, anything the guests on the show have done to help you, we're glad to help you. We're glad to help anyone who watches. We're here for each other. Not to take the tagline of another show whose host is in here, but we do recover better together, but we learn better together. We grow better together. We do all of that. Ob says, I traded ciggies over to vaping. I was spending $140 per week to $90 per month. Life more manageable. I'm not willing to stop vaping at this time. Again, it's a decision on you. and you know full well what you're doing, and it's on you to figure out what's best for your life and do that. I'm not going to be one that says you shouldn't vape. Far from it. You do what's right for you, especially when another moment of honesty, especially on the onset of the MS and the demyelination number 2, when a couple of people are talking to me about perhaps talking about medical marijuana and CBD. Yeah, I will never say don't vape. You do what's right for you all. You know that. A lot of people in this room know that too. Thank you, Jen. We're here for you too, but thank you for what you said, for sure. Hugs back at you, Sarah. Thank you. Hugs for you, Sarah. Hugs for you, John. Hugs for everybody in here. All of you. Ob says, you ever been afraid doing blood work and afraid to find out bad news? Ob, can I be honest with you for a second? Yeah, a little bit. But I also know that I'd rather know now so I could start doing something about it. But yeah, absolutely. Jeanette says, I think a lot of us addicts have a problem getting a close relationship with doctors after addiction because we for so long didn't use them for the right reasons. Yeah. Bob says, so am I. You know now, it's like, I hate using this term, but it's like ripping the Band-Aid off. Find out now. You got a doctor's visit, you draw some blood, get some tests done. Yeah, do it. It's the only way you find out so you can do something about it. I may not like the feeling of unease between the time I got the blood drawn and then waiting for the results to show up in Epic. But I know it's something I had to do. It's something I have to do. And every year, I'm sure now, semi-annual, I'm going to have to do. My liver numbers came out a little high. So it's something they're saying, may want to look at that again in July. And I reminded my doctor that I was on 5 days of Solumedrol. And then he said, yeah, that's about right. So, yeah. Have to absolutely keep on doing that for sure. Jen says, you are quite an inspiration. Keep telling your story. I plan to. I want to keep telling my story, but I also want you to tell your stories. I want you to be able to have that moment to tell your story and let me help you tell that story. Because, again, we're here for each other here. We are learning so much through this live stream. We're learning so much through the work we're doing in the Venture Forward and Recovering Addict and Sober James and Real Recovery with Nicole and all of you. All of you. The more we do it, the better off we are. Is there a bit of a cathartic give back? Yeah. I feel telling my story every time allows me to get a better handle on what's going on now versus what happened in my life previously. Fully taking full accountability of what transpired over 43 years of time. But the more I do it, the more people listen to it, the more they realize, oh my God, I have this thing going on. How did this help him? Maybe this is something I can do to help me. It's not about anything else but trying to help others. And if it's something in the sense that I tackled 3 major addictions in my life and I lost 200 plus pounds 3 times in my life and whatnot, if I can help, you know darn well I'm going to. So, thank you, Jen, for saying that. Ob says, I have high blood pressure and type 2 diabetes. Again, it's the sort of thing that unless you get tested, you wouldn't know. And now you have a doctor that's going to try to help you by way of diet, by way of insulin, by way of what have you. It's information that you can use to do something to better your health. That's a very important thing, Ob. Extremely important. Sue says, thank you for all you do at this venture. I send you all thank you and hugs. I send you hugs and love back, Sue. Thank you. Nathan, I am doing well. I'm doing well because you're here. I'm glad you're here, for sure. bit of a plug for the Thursday night show, because this one is actually going to require a bit of a homework assignment for all of you. But on Thursday, we're going to be talking about sleep. Yes, sleep. Something that if people are playing 23 hours on... No, I'm kidding. Sleep is a very important thing. Without sleep, our quality of life is very much marginalized. So we're going to have a guest on the show on Thursday that's going to talk to that. So between now and then, email me your questions. We'll address them. We'll also take questions live on Thursday. But we're going to talk about sleep, because we talked about how important meditation was. We talked about how important journaling was. Let's talk about sleep, because it is something that is intrinsic to everybody. We have to sleep. We sleep, we have a better quality of life, and our mental and physical functions are better. Our guest, Christina Grabnickas, on the show on Thursday, will talk more about that. And I'm looking forward to having her, but I'm also looking forward to your questions and comments for that show as well. So that'll be Thursday at 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific. And then one more quick little thing about the MS Society. Again, we talked about it before, but we wouldn't be where we are now with MS research, trying to find research on the disease-modifying treatments, potential cures, without the work of the National MS Society. Definitely an organization that, if you have a chance to read up more about and learn more about MS and demyelination, definitely do so. Their phone number, 1-800-344-4867. Again, 1-800-344-4867, or go to their website at nationalmssociety.org. Couple more comments real quick. Bob says, I can't diet, I fail. I am like the way you were. I need a better understanding of the food addiction, man. Yeah, I mean, Ob, if you ever want to talk about what I did to overcome my food addiction, I'm here always. I also recommend going to see a dietitian or a nutritionist. I went to see one in this third round. They helped me greatly. Granted, they said, well, why are you here? I said, well, I want to make sure I'm doing everything correctly, but they were there to help me. I went, I think 6 or 7 times, and they've been nothing but a massive help to me. So if you ever have the question, I would seriously talk to a dietitian or a nutritionist about your current food regimen, but then moreover, what sort of food regimen would work for you better. And on that, I'm going to tell you what I tell you at the end of every single Venture Forward. Stay safe, stay strong, stay sane, stay sober. You're worth it. I'll see you Thursday night at 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific to talk about sleep, how important sleep is. Join us then, won't you? Have a great night.